because I think you said that the ethics of the Torah is superior to Christianity and Islam. I believe that obviously that usury is banned in both Christianity and Islam, certainly was throughout most of the Middle Ages, and caused quite a lot of harm to Jews in the Middle Ages. But obviously, Islam bans usury, prohibits it very strongly. Christianity did do, and I think it's a lot looser on that now, depending on how religious or faithful you are. And so, just want to talk about the permissibility of usury between Jewish people and then between a Jew and a non-Jew.
Usury is not unethical if you interpret it the way the Torah lays it down, and it's not rabbinic; it's in the Torah. What we call ribis, charging interest, being able to finance a property or a certain item that built this country. People line up to try to get loans. It's a beautiful thing to use someone else's money to essentially build your wealth and pay them back. The real notion of usury that's unethical, both in Judaism as well as in Islam, is price gouging and deliberately lying to people. However, giving someone over a contract that they agreed to sign because every which way they calculate it, they end up winning at the end. How could that be a horrible thing? If you go to Dubai today and you try to finance a car, they will finance it for you. You see how they define financing not as usury, but that's identical to how the Torah understands what you define as usury. Most Muslims understand that if you want to purchase a property in some sort of Islamic republic, they will offer financing. And it's not understood as usury, because usury is really price gouging or acting unethically. Now, nowhere in the Torah does it say that you have to charge interest on Gentiles. It just says that towards your brethren, amitecha, you're not supposed to behave in such a manner. But go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that let's come back to the Islamic part of things, because I think you've misunderstood a little bit. And if you've talked to a Muslim before, it certainly wasn't me. They've misrepresented. I think in Hebrew it's called ribis, in Arabic it's called riba without the s, and certainly usury of all kinds, price gouging or cheap interest-bearing loans are totally prohibited in the Islamic context, and I'll come back to that. But do you think that, obviously, given the what happened in the Middle Ages, especially all across Europe, where Jews were the only groups that were allowed to use interest, and really why Jews were so fantastic in terms of the banking sector, such a deep heritage in the world of finance, because obviously they had a step ahead in that Christians weren't allowed any sort of usury and Jews were. Don't you think that contributed to a lot of the hatred and anti-Semitism towards Jews in Europe, and ended up, in the short term, like you said, is a beautiful thing, but in the long term ended up causing more harm than good?
I think that people who are primitive are always going to resent people who are successful, and they're not going to understand how that wealth was made. But because of the way that primitives behave, we're in some way supposed to say that the act that they're against or upset at is wrong inherently. I think it's an incorrect way to think. So what kings used to do was allow Jews to collect interest and then exile the Jews and take all that money. So it was really a tactic. We're talking about the resentment of people, having to pay compound interest amongst Christians. It seems that the problem was living a hypocritical lifestyle, saying, I'm going to borrow money, although Jesus told me I'm not allowed to lend money. So that kind of doesn't make too much sense.